Editor, person who combines the judicial functions of Minos, Radamanthus, and Aeacus, but is placable with an obelisk. A severely virtuous censor, but so charitable withal that he tolerates the virtues of others and the vices of himself, who flings about him the splintering lightning and sturdy thunders of admonition till he resembles a bunch of firecrackers petulantly uttering his mind at the tail of a dog. Then straightway murmurs a mild, melodious lay, soft as the cooing of a donkey intoning its prayer to the evening star. Master of mysteries and lord of law, high pinnacled upon the throne of thought, his face suffused with the dim splendors of the transfiguration, his legs intertwisted, his tongue a cheek, the editor spills his will along the paper and cuts it off in lengths to suit, and at intervals, from behind the veil of the temple is heard the voice of the foreman demanding 3 inches of wit and 6 lines of religious meditation, or bidding him turn off the wisdom and whack up some pathos. Oh, the Lord of Law on the throne of thought, a gilded impostor is he. Of shreds and patches his robes are wrought, his crown is brass, himself an ass, and his power is fiddle-dee-dee, crankily, prating of naught. Silly old quilly old monarch of thought, public opinion's camp follower he, thundering, blundering, plundering free, affected, ungracious, suspected, mendacious, respected, comparari, J.H. Bumbleshook. Education, that which discloses to the wise and disguises from the foolish their lack of understanding. Effect, the second of two phenomena which always occur together in the same order. The first, called a cause, is said to generate the other, which is no more sensible than it would be for one who has never seen a dog except in the pursuit of a rabbit, to declare the rabbit the cause of a dog. Egotist, person of low taste, more interested in himself than in me. Megaseph, chosen to serve the state in the halls of legislative debate, one day with all his credentials came to the Capitol's door and announced his name. The doorkeeper looked with a comical twist of the face at the eminent egotist and said, "Go away, for we settle here all manner of questions, naughty and queer, and we cannot have when the speaker demands to be told how every member stands, a man who to all things under the sky assents by eternally voting aye." Elegy, a composition in verse in which, without employing any of the methods of humor, the writer aims to produce in the reader's mind the dampest kind of dejection. The most famous English example begins somewhat like this. The cur foretells the knell of parting day, the loafing herd winds slowly over the lay. The wise man homeward plods. I only stay to fiddle faddle in a minor key. Eloquence, the art of orally persuading fools that white is the color that it appears to be. It includes the gift of making any color appear white. Elysium, an imaginary delightful country which the ancients foolishly believed to be inhabited by the spirits of the good. This ridiculous and mischievous fable was swept off the face of the earth by the early Christians. May their souls be happy in heaven. Emancipation, a bondsman's change from the tyranny of another to the despotism of himself. He was a slave. At word he went and came. His iron collar cut him to the bone. Then liberty erased his owner's name, tightened the rivets, and inscribed his own, GJ. Embalm, to cheat vegetation by locking up the gases upon which it feeds, by embalming their dead and thereby deranging the natural balance between animal and vegetable life. The Egyptians made their once fertile and populous country barren and incapable of supporting more than a meager crew. The modern metallic burial casket is a step in the same direction, and many a dead man who ought now to be ornamenting his neighbor's lawn as a tree or enriching his table as a bunch of radishes is doomed to a long inutility. We shall get him after a while if we are spared, but in the meantime the violet and rose are languishing for a nibble at his gluteus maximus. Emotion, a prostrating disease caused by a determination of the heart to the head. It is sometimes accompanied by a copious discharge of hydrated chloride of sodium from the eyes. Encomiast, a special but not particular kind of liar. Envelope, the coffin of a document, the scabbard of a bill, the husk of a remittance, the bedgown of a love letter. Envy, emulation adapted to the meanest capacity. Epaulet, an ornamental badge serving to distinguish a military officer from the enemy. That is to say, from the officer of lower rank to whom his death would give promotion. Epitaph, an inscription on a tomb showing that virtues acquired by death have a retroactive effect. Following is a touching example. Here lie the bones of Parson Platt, wise, pious, humble, and all that, who showed us life as all should live it. Let that be said, and God forgive it. Erudition, dust shaken out of a book into an empty skull. So wide his erudition's mighty span. He knew creation's origin and plan, and only came by accident to grief. He thought, poor man, 'twas right to be a thief. Fromage, pute, esoteric, very particularly abstruse and consummately occult. The ancient philosophies were of two kinds: exoteric, those that the philosophers themselves could partly understand, and esoteric, those that nobody could understand. It is the latter that have most profoundly affected modern thought and found greatest acceptance in our time. Evangelist, a bearer of good tidings, particularly in a religious sense, such as assure us of our own salvation and the damnation of our neighbors. Exception, a thing which takes the liberty to differ from other things of its class, as an honest man, a truthful woman. The exception proves the rule, is an expression constantly upon the lips of the ignorant, who parrot it from one another with never a thought of its absurdity. In the Latin, exceptio probat regulam means that the exception tests the rule, puts it to the proof, not confirms it. The malefactor who drew the meaning from this excellent dictum and substituted a contrary one of his own exerted an evil power which appears to be immortal. Excess. In morals, an indulgence that enforces by appropriate penalties the law of moderation. Hail, high excess, especially in wine, to thee in worship do I bend the knee, who preach abstemiousness unto me. My skull, thy pulpit, as my paunch, thy shrine, precept on precept, aye, and line on line, could never persuade so sweetly to agree with reason as thy touch, exact and free, upon my forehead and along my spine. At thy command, eschewing pleasure's cup with the hot grape, I warm no more my wit, when on thy stool of penitence I sit. I'm quite converted, for I can't get up. Ungrateful he who afterward would falter to make new sacrifices at thine altar. This excommunication is a word in speech ecclesiastical oft heard, and means the damning with bell, book, and candle some sinner whose opinions are a scandal, a right permitting Satan to enslave him forever, and forbidding Christ to save him. Gat Huckle. Executive, an officer of the government whose duty it is to enforce the wishes of the legislative power until such time as the judicial department shall be pleased to pronounce them invalid and of no effect. Following is an extract from an old book entitled The Lunarian Astonished, Pfeiffer and Co., Boston, 1803. Lunarian. Then, when your Congress has passed a law, it goes directly to the Supreme Court in order that it may at once be known whether it is constitutional. Terrestrian. Oh no, it does not require the approval of the Supreme Court until, having perhaps been enforced for many years, somebody objects to its operation against himself. I mean, his client. The president, if he approves it, begins to execute it at once. Lunarian. Ah, the executive power is part of the legislative. Do your policemen also have to approve the local ordinances that they enforce? Terrestrian. Not yet, at least not in their character of constables. Generally speaking, though, all laws require the approval of those whom they are intended to restrain. Lunarian. I see. The death warrant is not valid until signed by the murderer. Terrestrian. My friend, you put it too strongly. We are not so consistent. Lunarian. But the system of maintaining an expensive judicial machinery to pass upon the validity of laws only after they have long been executed, and then only when brought before the court by some private person, does not cause great confusion? Terrestrian. It does. Lunarian. Why then should not your laws previously to being executed be validated not by the signature of your president, but by that of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court? Terrestrian. There is no precedent for any such course. Lunarian. Precedent? What is that? Terrestrian. It has been defined by 500 lawyers in 3 volumes each, so how can anyone know? Exhort. In religious affairs, to put the conscience of another upon the spit and roast it to a nut brown discomfort. Existence. A transient, horrible, fantastic dream, wherein is nothing, yet all things do seem, from which we are awakened by a friendly nudge of our bedfellow death, and cry, "Oh, fudge!" Experience. The wisdom that enables us to recognize as an undesirable old acquaintance the folly that we have already embraced. To one who, journeying through night and fog, is mired neck deep in an unwholesome bog, experience, like the rising of the dawn, reveals the path that he should not have gone. Troll Fraud Bink. Mad, affected with a high degree of intellectual independence, not conforming to standards of thought, speech, and action derived by the conformants from study of themselves, at odds with the majority. In short, unusual. It is noteworthy that persons are pronounced mad by officials destitute of evidence that themselves are sane. For illustration, this present and illustrious lexicographer is no firmer in the faith of his own sanity than is any inmate of any madhouse in the land. Yet, for aught he knows to the contrary, instead of the lofty occupation that seems to him to be engaging his powers, he may really be beating his hands against the window bars of an asylum and declaring himself Noah Webster to the innocent delight of many thoughtless spectators. Magic, an art of converting superstition into coin. There are other arts serving the same high purpose, but the discreet lexicographer does not name them. Magnitude. Size. Magnitude being purely relative, nothing is large and nothing small. If everything in the universe were increased in bulk 1,000 diameters, nothing would be any larger than it was before. But if one thing remained unchanged, all the others would be larger than they had been. To an understanding familiar with the relativity of magnitude and distance, the spaces and masses of the astronomer would be no more impressive than those of the microscopist. For anything we know to the contrary, the visible universe may be a small part of an atom with its component ions floating in the life fluid, luminiferous ether of some animal. Possibly the weak creatures peopling corpuscles of our own blood are overcome with proper emotion when contemplating the unthinkable distance from one of these to another. Maiden, a young person of the unfair sex, addicted to clueless conduct and views that madden to crime. The genus has a wide geographical distribution, being found wherever sought and deplored wherever found. The maiden is not altogether unpleasing to the eye, nor without her piano and her views insupportable to the ear, though in respect to comeliness distinctly inferior to the rainbow, and with regard to the part of her that is audible, bleaten out of the field by the canary, which also is more portable. A lovelorn maiden, she sat and sang this quaint, sweet song, sang she. It's oh, for a youth with a football bang and a muscle fair to see, the captain, he, of a team to be. On the gridiron he shall shine, a monarch by right divine, and never to roast on it me. Upline Jones. Male, a member of the unconsidered or negligible sex. The male of the human race is commonly known to the female as mere man. The genus has two varieties, good providers and bad providers. Marriage, the state or condition of a community consisting of a master, a mistress, and two slaves, making in all two. Martyr, one who moves along the line of least reluctance to a desired death. Material, having an actual existence, as distinguished from an imaginary one. Important. Material things I know, or feel, or see. All else is immaterial to me. John Rock Hollowbaum.